AB 1162. AB 1162 would increase the maximum civil fines for all poaching from $10,000 to $40,000. Additionally, this bill would establish a new criminal penalty for poaching of trophy game to be no less than $5,000 and no more than $40,000 or up to 1 year in county jail or both. This bill would also make it illegal for any person to use a signal-emitting device when taking a bear for commercial purposes. That fine would be $10,000 per bear part. This bill is intended to ensure that poachers pay back the full value of the wildlife resources that they took from the public by increasing fines to more accurately reflect the value of those resources and by creating a greater deterrent to poaching. This bill has received no votes. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Nielsen. Mr. Nielsen.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, I voted for this in appropriations, but on further reflection and a broader application, I'm going to vote no today, and I'll tell you why. It's about fines and fees, and the agencies of government who for now 2 decades have gone hog wild raising fees and fining people so they can make money for their agencies. If this bill had a provision in it right now that had some kind of guidelines by which they could get to their $40,000 fine, some kind of constraints, a criteria that need to be considered. You're giving the Fish and Game Department a blank check, and that organization right now has gone hog wild in fees and fines to make money for their agency, to conduct their intrusive business, sometimes, frankly, illegally. And I have some examples up in the Siskiyous that I'll not bore you with today, but very egregious behavior, maybe even violations of the penal code. That said, enough to fees and fines. No.
Mr. Chesbro, you may close.
Whether or not you believe, Mr. Nielsen, that the agency has gone hog wild, so far the hog has not been considered a trophy animal, so it will not be affected by this bill. But in any case, and I want to correct myself, up till now this bill has received no votes, but I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 45, noes 12. The measure passes. File item 82, AB 1167. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 1167 by Senator Fong and others, an act relating to homelessness.
Mr. Fong.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. California has the highest homeless population in the nation. On any given night, 360,000 men, women, families, veterans, and children are sleeping on our streets, in tents, or in temporary shelters. Furthermore, because of the economic crisis, the state has seen an increase in families with children living on our streets or in homeless shelters. Despite our large homeless population, California is one of the only large states that does not have an active interagency council on homelessness. AB 1167 will establish an interagency council on homelessness composed of public, private, and nonprofit representatives. AB 1167 will allow California to have a coordinated response to end homelessness. This council will act as a lead in not only coordinating and planning the state's response to homelessness, but coordinate additional funding the state can receive from the federal government for the prevention and reduction of homelessness. Though each state agency does tremendous work in administering their respective programs regarding the homeless population, the state's current fragmented approach has not been successful in developing strategic plans to address this growing issue. Members, in light of the growing numbers of homeless populations, including our foster youth, families, and veterans, California needs to exercise leadership in addressing this social problem. I respectfully request your aye vote.
Mr. Dickinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also want to speak in favor of this particular bill. For those of us who have been active in developing 10-year plans to end chronic homelessness in our own communities, we know how effective the Federal Interagency Council on Homelessness under the recent President Bush was in directing and coordinating federal resources for that purpose. Unfortunately, the state, because of the very fragmented approach it's had, has not been a very effective partner in helping us to address the issue of homelessness in our local communities. So I commend the author for this bill, which I believe will allow the state to participate much more effectively and meaningfully in our efforts in our local communities to make sure everyone has a roof over their head.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 44, noes 14. The measure passes. Members, we're going to take one item out of order upon mutual consent. That is item 104, AB 51. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 51 by Senator Yamada and others, an act relating to payroll cards.
Ms. Yamada.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members, and I appreciate the courtesy extended to me and Assemblymember Carter as she has to make her way about 2 o'clock today. AB 51 is a bill that will establish a framework and a structure for the use of payroll cards as a payment method for wages in California. Members, currently payroll cards are becoming a much more popular version of issuing wages to employees, both for businesses who find the cost to be less than that of issuing traditional paper checks, and also safer for employees who receive their wages via a payroll card. Permission to use a prop, Mr. Speaker?
Without objection.
Thank you. This is an example of a payroll card, members. It looks very similar to many of the cards that we carry every day. Members, as this payment method has become increasingly popular, both in terms of cost and security, employees have suffered sometimes differing standards for the issuance of these cards and are also subject to fees upon use of these cards that essentially nickel and dime their wages away. AB 51, we believe, is a straightforward and common sense method to establish a statewide standard for the use of these cards that will ensure certainty for both the employers as well as the employees. For those reasons, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Ms. Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'm pleased to be a joint author of AB 51. It's a great measure that will implement payroll cards in California, but more importantly, it offers protection for those who choose to use it. According to the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, about 8% of U.S. households do not have accounts with banks or any financial institutions. The protections provided with this bill will help benefit both employees and employers, and for these reasons, I respectfully request your aye vote.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Ms. Yamada moves a call. File item 83, AB 1214. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1214 by Assemblymember Skinner, an act relating to electricity.
Ms. Skinner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 1214's purpose is to facilitate the timely construction of our electric transmission facilities. The bill requires the parties responsible for the planning, the permitting, and the siting of new electric transmission to collaborate and prepare a report that explains the barriers to and the potential solutions for constructing sufficient transmission by 2016, the year that the Federal Investment Tax Credit, the ITC, expires. 1214 will result in the acceleration of transmission construction. It has bipartisan support, and I ask for your aye vote.
Ms. Harkey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. We did not vote on this in appropriations because there were amendments being taken at that time that we hadn't had time to analyze. We have. It's a good bill, and I support it as well. Thank you.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 62, noes 0. The measure passes. File item 84, AB 1215. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1215 by Assemblymember Blumenfield, an act relating to vehicles.
Mr. Blumenfield.
Mr. Speaker, members, AB 1215 is legislation intended to move us forward into the 21st century by expanding the use of technology and services provided by state government, in this instance, the Department of Motor Vehicles. It would renew new vehicle dealerships to require them to register their cars through the electronic vehicle registration program that begins July 1st, 2012. It allows DMV to use technology that works smarter and more effectively. As this bill moves forward, I continue to work with the stakeholders on ensuring further consumer protections and an appropriate charge increase that covers the mandated costs. This bill provides significant cost-benefit savings to the state, upwards of $9 million. The bill also assists the California Highway Patrol by ensuring that motorists place their license plate on vehicles within 90 days. This basically, we're losing millions of dollars to scofflaws who take advantage of the lag time between when people get their new license. To date, this bill has received no votes, and I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 54, noes 2. The measure passes. File item 85, AB 1229. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1229 by Assemblymember Fuhr, an act relating to transportation financing.
Mr. Fuhr.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This is a bill without opposition and that has had unanimous bipartisan support. It simply provides additional tools to transportation planning agencies so they can find ways to advance upfront funding at this moment when we need jobs and when costs of construction are cheap. Urge an aye vote.
Seeing no questions Ms. Harkey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Once again, this was a bill that had some amendments during appropriations. We did not vote, and so I respectfully request an aye vote as well.
Thank you, Ms. Harkey. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 60, noes 0. The measure passes. File item 86, AB 1244. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1244 by Assemblymember Chesbro and others, an act relating to developmental services.
Mr. Chesbro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, over 29 states across the country, blue states and red states, have established an option for self-determination for people with developmental disabilities. Self-determination remains the gold standard for empowerment of people with developmental disabilities and full inclusion in their communities. Self-determination puts the person with a disability in control of their service dollars. They are given a capitated budget which is held by a fiscal intermediary. From this budget, they're able to hire their own workers, purchase services of their choice that promote inclusion. In 1998, I authored and the legislature authorized small self-determination pilot programs for people with developmental disabilities. But today, 13 years later, only 140 people with developmental disabilities have been allowed to take advantage of self-determination. Your vote for AB 1244 would finally give all regional center clients the option to choose self-determination. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 41, noes 21. The measure passes. File item 87, AB 1296. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1296 by Assemblymember Bonilla, an act relating to public health.
Ms. Bonilla.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. AB 1296 streamlines and simplifies eligibility, enrollment, and retention for public health coverage programs. The Affordable Health Care Act provides states with 100% federal funding from the exchange grant and 90% of federal funds on the Medi-Cal side to build a single statewide application to be used by all entities accepting and processing applications for enrolling consumers in health coverage. The system must be available to apply by phone, in person, by mail, or online for enrolling into Medi-Cal, Healthy Families, and the exchange. AB 1296 enacts the Health Care Eligibility, Enrollment, and Retention Act to implement the much-needed No Wrong Door application system to enroll consumers in the most appropriate program. With the Affordable Care Act implementation rapidly approaching, we must move forward to ensure the Act is implemented on time, to ensure that the overall purpose of the Act is achieved, that people are enrolled and benefit from the health programs that they can afford. We need a user-friendly, efficient system that works for real people. There's widespread support, no opposition to this bill, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 41, noes 22. The measure passes. File item 88, AB 1299. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1299 by Assemblymember Huffman and others, an act relating to marine fisheries.
Mr. Huffman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 1299 is an important ocean protection bill. Last week, we took the important step of protecting sharks, the top predators in the ocean food web, in passing AB 376. Today, I'm asking your support for a bill that will deal with tiny sea creatures, anchovies, herrings, squid, and others. These are the forage fish that make up the bottom of the food web. But just like the creatures at the top of the food web, their health in the ocean ecosystem is critical for maintaining healthy oceans. AB 1299 does two very simple things, and it has been amended, I do want to point out, so the scope has narrowed considerably. First, it establishes a state policy of ecosystem-based management of forage species. This is to ensure that their use when we use them for consumption and for fisheries, that we also take into consideration their unique role as the foundation of the ocean's food web. Second, it requires that as we go forward in making fishery management decisions, that those decisions simply be consistent with that policy. The bill ensures the protection of forage fisheries by providing a mechanism for considering their important ecosystem services, and I recommend and request an aye vote.
Mr. Monning.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise in support of AB 1299. As the author mentioned, he has taken amendments. I have constituents, some in the fishing community, who are concerned about this, others in the environmental community supporting it. But there's some crossover. Sports fishing community supports this. And ultimately, the commercial success of our commercial fishermen is also dependent on eco-planning that protects these forage species. In other words, the fish stock that is commercially valuable is dependent on a healthy forage species stock. The author is committed to continuing to work with all stakeholders, as am I. I urge your support to move this forward and to keep stakeholders engaged. Thank you.
Mr. Lara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I also rise in support of this measure. Members, healthy fisheries and healthy oceans depend on a healthy food web and a healthy coastal economy. I respectfully ask that you support this important measure. Thank you.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Mr. Huffman moves a call. File item 89, AB 1302. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1302 by Assemblymember Williams, an act relating to electricity.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 1302 codifies PUC regulations which require investor-owned utilities to produce distribution generation interconnection maps and places standards on those maps. It also requires publicly owned utilities to produce the same kind of maps. As you know, California has some of the most ambitious renewable goals in the nation. The governor has called for 12,000 megawatts of distributed generation by 2020. And in order to meet these goals, maps that identify zones that are optimal for deployment are vital. While progress and efforts have been made by large electrical corporations to produce such maps, we don't have maps from all utilities, leaving us with an incomplete picture of the state. Further, there is no consistent set of guidelines or criteria for such maps. This is particularly difficult for generators, people who want to produce the wind, solar, or geothermal or biomass to bring us into an alternative energy future. They don't know where to connect with the grid. AB 1302 requires and standardizes interconnection maps produced by investor and publicly owned utilities in an effort to provide a comprehensive picture of our current system. Ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 42, noes 22. The measure passes. File item 90, AB 1310. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1310 by Assemblymember Furutani, an act relating to education.
Mr. Furutani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members. We talk about developing jobs. We talk about job training, workforce development, career tech ed. Our current workforce development system and career technical education system has been developed with a patchwork of different programs and varying agencies. In many circumstances, these agencies receive state and federal dollars to aid the same population we're seeking to train and get ready for basic skills and therefore a job. Mr. Speaker, may I use a visual aid?
Without objection.
This is a mapping of California's workforce development system, just to give you an idea about how varied it is. We have programs that do job training and career technical education in the education world. We have them in the Labor Department. We have them in prisons. We have them all over the place. What this bill, AB 1310, does is it directs the Secretary of Labor, in conjunction with the Chancellor of the Community College District, California Workforce Development Boards, and all the other stakeholders in job training and workforce development, to come up and to develop a single strategic plan for connecting the delivery of all of these programs relative to workforce development and career tech education. At this point, they are all existent in silos. Everybody does their own thing, and one common thing that they all have is they have less and less dollars. This then means that it would be better to tear down the silos, maximize the limited resources with coordination and collaboration in one strategic effort to make sure we do the kind of job training, career technical education, and workforce development that's going to take on the issues of the new millennium, green economy, and other new manufacturing and technical fields that will develop in this great state of California. This bill will help identify ways to strengthen this, bring together adult schools, high school career technical programs, regional occupation centers, workforce investment boards, and a wide variety of public and private education programs. In these difficult economic times, when people are facing cuts, it's time for us to change how we deliver our education services by people coming together around a strategic view about how to deliver this education that's going to speak to improving the economy and bringing California back to where it should be by providing technical jobs, jobs that are high paying, and jobs that will deal with the challenges of the industries and the manufacturing base of the future. I urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Mr. Garrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will rise also just to compliment the author and to add my words of encouragement and support as it relates to this career technical education bill. I would urge all of my Republican colleagues to vote aye. It gives students the flexibility to get the graduation credits necessary to allow them to take those career technical education courses and graduate on time. I urge an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will unless you wish to close, Mr. Furutani. No. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 52, noes 3. The measure passes. File item 91, AB 1313. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1313 by Assemblymember Lara, an act relating to employment.
Mr. Lara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, AB 1313 is a technical bill that promotes transparency on how government is working for those that it's meant to protect. Specifically, AB 1330 will require the Agricultural Labor Relations Board and its General Counsel to publish on the board's website certain information in addition to the information already required to publish regarding each open case. The information shall include the name of the case, the nature of the case, the date of the case was open, and the anticipated timeline for the resolution of the case. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Mr. Lara moves a call. Members, we'd like to welcome to the chamber the 4th grade class from Arroyo Seco Elementary School in Livermore. Welcome. File item 92, AB 1320. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1320 by Assemblymember Allen, an act relating to public employees' retirement.
Mr. Allen.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, AB 1320 will help stabilize public employer contributions to public employee retirement systems. You may well recall that the Little Hoover Commission, when they reviewed our public pension systems, identified the stabilization of contributions as one of the most important components for pension reform. What this does is stabilize the funds so that in times when rates would skyrocket because of low returns, there's reserve funds to allow funding from the employer accounts to able to equalize. So in essence, this bill deals with the issue of employer holidays. And I think, you know, there's a number of public employers that have gotten in deep trouble with their pension systems because they've taken prolonged holidays. So what the stabilization fund will do is essentially smooth out the rates to prevent spiking for the employers for the contributions. I would urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Mr. Mansour.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I rise in opposition to this bill. AB 1320 is a mandatory increase in the cost of public employee pensions under both CalPERS and the County Employees Retirement Law of 1937. This bill entails very major state costs and will likely require additional pension contributions of over $100 million annually. And this will also likely increase the cost to local governments by over $1 billion annually. And we have already, the state government has already taken millions of dollars from local governments in past years, and now we want to put additional burdens on them. And this represents the Democrats and unions' basic approach to public employee pensions, and that is to push meaningless reform without doing anything to bring public employee compensation into balance with private sector companies. For these reasons, I voted no on PERS, and I urge your no vote. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Mr. Allen, you may close.
I think what this bill, in fact, will accomplish is to stabilize the employer rates, which would doing the state government and local government a huge favor in the long run. So I urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 22. Measure passes. File item 93, AB 1330. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1330 by Assemblymember Furutani, an act relating to graduation requirements.
Support. Mr. Furutani.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker and members. It is a support bill. This bill is my third chance at doing it. It is passed off our floor last year. The year before has not no votes. It got vetoed by the governor last year. But with this, what this provides is an option for high school students that complete a career technical education course to use it to fulfill an existing high school graduation requirement. The intent of the bill is to prepare students for the workforce and to increase high school graduation rates, which is an ever-pressing issue given our high dropout crisis. AB 1330 will empower students to take ownership over their future, whether they're entering a 2-year or 4-year post-secondary institution or a trade or apprenticeship program or directly into the workforce. The CTE courses are not the old vocational courses of the past. CTE courses today include courses like energy and environmental technology, architectural and structural engineering, and media and design arts. CTE courses today prepare students for both college and career. AB 1330 has received bipartisan support and has a diverse list of supporters such as teachers, administrators, laborers, and manufacturers. I urge and I vote.
Mr. Garrick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, I'd like to first urge an aye vote on this bill, AB 1330, and just do a clarification that I was mistaken in my prior floor statement. I'm sure Mr. Furutani recognized that, but AB 1310, I'm changing my vote to a no vote. AB 1330 is an aye vote. It's full support for career technical education. My comments earlier applied to that bill and not 1310. So I urge an aye vote on 1330.
Mr. Norby.
I urge an aye vote also, Madam Speaker, on 1330. The main opposition to this bill came from the foreign language teachers in the high schools, and they're still opposed to it, and I can understand why, because it does threaten their jobs. Their point is that we don't want to minimize the teaching of foreign languages in our high schools, and I understand that. The teaching of German is fast disappearing. Some high schools don't have French. Latin, that's been gone for a while from most of the public schools. But the fact is that about maybe upwards of 25% of the kids in our public high schools already speak a non-English language at home. They may not speak it perfectly, but they speak it well enough so they could test out of this requirement once they go to college. And to require that they either take a foreign language, which they already know, or a fine art instead of a technical or career class really is to their disadvantage. Plus the fact there's not a clear differentiation between a fine arts class and a career technical education class. Mechanical design, graphic arts, things like that should serve a qualification for a kid who doesn't want to take drama or art and who already speaks a non-English language fluently can test out of it. So this provides flexibility, and I support it.
Okay. Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 60, no 0. Measure passes. File item 94, AB 1344. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1344 by Assemblymember Feuer, an act relating to local government.
Mr. Feuer, support.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. This is a bill I'm proud to have jointly authored with our colleague, Mr. Alejo. The bill has been amended to take into account concerns, for example, those raised by Mr. Knight in committee. As a consequence, it had all unanimous support in the Appropriations Committee. It addresses issues related to the Bell scandal, and urge an aye vote.
Mr. Norby.
I did vote no in committee, but the amendments have made this a little less onerous than it was originally. Every scandal doesn't require a whole new set of laws, just like every crime doesn't require a whole new set of laws. And with all the spate of the Bell bills, we have to look at the fact that in Bell, the system ultimately did work with existing laws. You had a compliant electorate, you had a council that was in over their heads, but in the end, a free press and a vigilant constituency recalled the Bell Council. So while some tweaks of the system may be needed and we don't want to overreact to that. I will say in closing, this is very different to the situation in the city of Vernon, where structurally you don't have any kind of independent electorate that can reform their city. So those reforms and that bill on Vernon is still necessary, while in Bell the system work, and with the amendments I do support this.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Aye 63, no 0. Measure passes. File item 95, AB 1379. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1379 by Assemblymember Bradford and others, an act relating to economic development.
Mr. Bradford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. AB 1379 simply requires the state controller to collect data as it relates to public pension funds, investments in California with emerging domestic markets. Emerging domestic markets are small-owned, family, women-owned, minority, urban, and rural businesses who are doing business in the state of California, and we're encouraging our public pension funds to invest with them. Currently, our nation's two largest pension funds, CalSTRS and CalPERS, already have a 2% set aside for investments in emerging domestic markets. It's good for California. It's good for small business, and I urge aye vote.
Mr. Mansour.
I'll keep it real short and simple. 7 new positions and increasing costs, over $700,000 in increased costs. Thank you. I urge a no vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Mr. Bradford, you may close.
The state is already collecting this data, so it's no direct cost. It's just a file of information, and in that specific area as it relates to emerging domestic markets, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 42, noes 21. Measure passes. File item 96, AB 1387. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1387 by Assemblymember Solorio, an act relating to parole.
Mr. Solorio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This bill permanently establishes the Youthful Offender Reentry Grant Program under the authority of the California Emergency Management Agency. The program is federally funded and provides competitive grants for programs that help youth offenders between 16 and 23 years of age upon their release from custody with integrated education and job training services. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 44, noes 12. Measure passes. File item 97, AB 1369. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1369 by Assemblymember Gatto, an act relating to taxation to take effect immediately. Tax levy.
Mr. Gatto.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, backed by popular demand, this is the bill that I started to present the other day. It's a support bill. This bill would add and augment to the list of activities for which businesses cannot claim a tax deduction for. These are criminal activities, members. This would add child pornography to the list. This would add Medicare, Medi-Cal fraud to the list. We need to update the tax code because the tax code specifically refers to certain crimes for which there can be no deduction. This bill simply updates the tax code to add in a couple additional crimes. I respectfully ask for aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 54, no 0. Measure passes. File item 98, AB 54. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 54 by Assemblymember Solorio, an act relating to drinking water.
Support. Mr. Solorio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This bill takes some moderate steps to protect drinking water quality, especially for Californians served by mutual water companies. It levels the playing field between public water agencies and mutual water companies and expedites funding of projects to improve drinking water quality. With that, it does have bipartisan support, as indicated, minimizes state costs, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 63, no 0. Measure passes. File item 99, AB 520. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 520 by Assemblymember Amiano, an act relating to sentencing.
Mr. Amiano.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. California's felony sentencing statute expires at the end of this year. The temporary law was adopted in 2007 in response to a United States Supreme Court which invalidated all felony sentences in California. AB 520 extends the law until 2013. It makes no substantive changes to current law. As Chair of Public Safety, I have initiated a review of the statute, a review which was requested when the temporary law was originally adopted. I have held an informational hearing, and I will be sitting down with stakeholders to identify any changes, modifications, clarifications we need to make to ensure that our felony sentencing statute complies with constitutional requirements. Again, AB 520 does not change current law. It simply extends the sunset until January 2013. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Nielsen.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, a little historical perspective. That's a law that years ago conservatives and Republicans both supported and all lived to rue the day Governor Brown signed it and lived to say that he made a mistake in signing the term sentence law. It switched, wherein most of the inmates then became set term sentenced inmate, not subject to the discretion of the boards. And one of the provisions in there, one of the compromises, was in fact allowing the judicial branch to assess a low middle term. This just is a historical reminder. I don't think we need any corrections, and I urge a no vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Mr. Amiano, you may close.
Yes, thank you very much, and I do ask for an aye vote. I think this is a very simple, direct measure that will not result in any kind of changing of this law, which has been established for a number of years. Thank you.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 21. Measure passes. File item 100, AB 893. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 893 by Assemblymember V. Manuel Perez, an act relating to state government.
Mr. Perez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This measure is part of a four-bill package designed to enhance the ability of the iBank to meet infrastructure and economic development needs of the state. AB 893 focuses on providing technical assistance to small and rural communities in obtaining financing for infrastructure projects. This bill helps California to make more effective use of the iBank. It modernizes the operations of the iBank, making it more relevant and inclusive of those involved in economic development. First, it authorizes the iBank to conduct outreach and technical assistance to small and rural communities. And second, it adds new reporting requirements to the appropriate fiscal and policy committees of the legislature. This bill will help bring the iBank up to date and help to maximize its potential to serve communities throughout California, especially rural California. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 44, no 17. Measure passes. File item 101, AB 1090. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1090 by Assemblymember Blumenfield, an act relating to taxation.
Mr. Blumenfield.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, for more than 30 years, the state's Senior and Disabled Citizens Property Tax Postponement Program helped thousands of low and moderate income Californians remain in their homes by postponing their property taxes. Relying on annual general fund support, the program was suspended indefinitely in 2009 due to state budget cuts, something I think a lot of us regret as part of that budget deal, that left over 2,500 needy Californians fearful and vulnerable to foreclosures, evictions, and potential victimization by scam artists. Under the program, the state paid a participant's property taxes to the county and placed a lien on the property. The property taxes were repaid with interest when the person's property was sold or transferred. The program was very successful, protecting our most vulnerable citizens and bringing in revenue to the state. Over the last 15 years, the state has made over $41 million on this program. As it is written now, this bill, AB 1090, seeks to recreate in a creative way the program at no cost to the state. No cost to the state, and it creates it as a county opt-in program, and it tightens the eligibility requirements. The recent amendments have removed the opposition that was previously there, and I ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Donnelly.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, members. I just wanted to make note that that this amendment has removed some of our objections to this bill. We think it is an important program, and we certainly want to keep a sharp eye on it going forward and make sure that it doesn't morph into anything. But I think that it's something that we could support at this time and then look at it as it comes back. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 65, noes 1. Measure passes. File item 102, AB 1195. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1195 by Assemblymember Allen, an act relating to taxation to take effect immediately. Tax levy.
Mr. Allen. Mr. Allen.
Madam Speaker, fellow members, I bring to you today AB 1195 that would expand the parameters for the state's new jobs tax credit. Currently, a business only qualified for the credit if they have 20 or fewer employees. This expands it out to 50 or more employees to claim the credit. It also allows for faster and more targeted utilization of the tax credit to help stimulate job growth in California. This bill received bipartisan support in all committees that it's gone through. And I would really like to thank Assembly Members Perea, Wachowski, Harkey, Portantino, and Swanson for bringing this important piece of legislation to me. I urge an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 63, no 0. Measure passes. File item 103 has been dispensed with. File item 104 has been dispensed with. File item 105, AB 353. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 353 by Assemblymember Cedillo, an act relating to transportation.
Mr. Cedillo.
Members, very simple bill that simply repeals an ineffective exemption that was established in 1982, permitting us to have conformity and coherence with state law that requires all local governments to sign off on infrastructure projects that go through their cities. I ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Lara.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I regretfully rise in opposition to my good friend, Senator Cedillo's bill. You know, the 710 freeway runs through the heart of the 50th district, and prohibiting local governments from participating in the process of any projects dealing with the 710 will hurt my constituents. I respectfully request a no vote. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Mr. Cedillo, you may close.
Only that the bill does the opposite of what the objections that were raised and actually provides a uniform opportunity for all local governments to have a say. I ask for an aye.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 42, noes 6. Measure passes. Okay, we're going to lift the call on file item 3, AB 515. File item 3, AB 515 by Brownlee. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Whoops. Hold on. I put you back down. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 15. Measure passes. No.
Okay, members, we're going to go to file item 17 and lift the call on AB 1136. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 47, noes 26. Measure passes. File item 28, AB 358. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 74, noes 0 on the urgency. Ayes 74, noes 0 on the measure. Measure passes. File item 51, AB 291. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 59, noes 1 on the urgency. Ayes 59, noes 1 on the measure. Measure passes. File item 75, AB 1112. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Mr. Huffman, do you have any more members who desire to vote? All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Mr. Huffman moves the call. File item 104, AB 51. Ms. Yamada, the clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 46, noes 23. Measure passes. File item 88, AB 1299, Mr. Huffman, the clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Mr. Huffman moves the call. File item 91, AB 1313 by Mr. Lara. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 45, noes 23. Measure passes. Is there any objection to granting unanimous consent to Ms. Harkey to hear reconsider file item number 6, AB 505? Seeing no objection, the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 505 by Assemblymember Harkey, an act relating to housing.
Ms. Harkey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. I want to thank the Speaker very much for his consideration. This bill is a simple bill that requires an audit. Unfortunately, it was kind of sandbagged due to not going through JLAC. But as you know, I do not choose committees that my bills appear. That is Assembly rules. So I would like to represent again, and well, it is. I mean, I think everybody determines that. And there was a bill, AB 187, by the chair of JLAC that also did not go through JLAC, that had to do with state audits and whatnot, that we approved unanimously on this floor. So while I appreciate that he took umbrage with maybe being bypassed, that was not a problem of mine, and I followed procedure and made the floor legitimately. So I'd like you to I'd like reconsideration from all of you for this bill that states that on or before January 1st, 2013, and every 4 years thereafter, the Bureau of State Audits shall conduct a performance of audit of all programs funded through general fund sources and administered by the HCD. Now, if it is still requested that we go through JLAC, that amendment can be taken in the Senate, but I do respectfully request your aye vote and your consideration for a policy and a courtesy move on this floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harkey. Mr. Lara.
Again, members, I ask for a no vote. I want to reiterate, if Ms. Harkey wants a audit on the department, we're more than welcome to visit that in JLAC committee. Another point of clarification, JLAC does not hear bills, we hear audit requests. And so if, I think that's the appropriate venue for this issue to go. And again, I remind you, this will tie the hands of the state auditor's office to a number of approximately $350,000 a year for ongoing audits that may not be needed. And so I want to make sure that this body knows exactly what they're doing. If we're going to mandate this audit, it's going to keep us from really prioritizing those audits that we deem appropriate and important at the time that we vote. And so I just want to again reiterate, urge you a no vote, and I look forward to working with Ms. Harkey in the JLAC committee to addressing the audit she would like to take care of in the near future. I respectfully ask for a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lara. Ms. Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to clarify, if it was confusing yesterday, I am still opposed to this bill, and it is not because the bill didn't go through JLAC. It's because the bill, the policy that we're being asked to approve on the floor, members, is that the Department of Housing be audited every 4 years from here on out. And the current way that we use the resources of the State Auditor's Office is to have members do their audit request in front of the Joint Legislative Audit Committee so that we may prioritize the money that's being used for the State Auditor's Office to conduct these audits. So the objection is not because the Rules Committee did not take this bill and put it in JLAC where we would have said all the same arguments. The objection is to the underlying policy of the bill, that we're going to commit the state auditor's resources solely for doing Department of Housing audits every 4 years, and that will take away from all of you being able to conduct audits in different departments that you want to conduct. And as the author mentioned yesterday when we took this up initially, 2/3 of the budget of the Department of Housing is already audited every single year as part of the single audit that we do to comply with federal law. So the question is whether, as a policy, we want to agree that the Department of Housing should be audited every 4 years for the remaining third of their budget, or whether that decision should be made by this body in the Joint Legislative Audit Committee on an as-needed basis. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for the author, and I apologize if this was perceived as because of Rules Committee not referring it to JLAC to be looked at, but it is really about the underlying policy and how we prioritize the resources of the State Auditor's Office, so I still ask for your no vote.
Thank you, Ms. Huber. Ms. Torres.
Members, whether we agree or disagree with a policy, I think out of respect for a member's request that we should allow for reconsideration. I respectfully request that we vote yes to reconsider this bill.
Ms. Torres, we're on the motion. We've granted unanimous consent on the request for reconsideration. Would you like to comment on the substance of the bill?
I apologize. I misunderstood. This bill came through my committee, and it was a huge bill. The author of this bill worked diligently in my committee, and we scaled it down to what it is now. An audit every 4 years, I really don't think is too much to ask for. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Ms. Torres. Ms. Harkey, you may close.
Thank you, and I want to thank my members from the other side of the aisle that have offered words of support, as well as you, Mr. Speaker. I understand the concerns. As I said, the audit process could be picked up in Senate through an amendment. I would be amenable to that. It's just that I have reached the floor with this, taken amendments. This is not the original bill I wanted. I would think that as a courtesy one member to another, I could get an aye vote, but if that's not the case, then I certainly understand. But I do respectfully request your aye vote. This is not an unusual process. We had amended it. It went through 2 policy committees with no votes, and it had no opposition. And so to be turned down on the floor is one thing for a procedure, which one of my members, if you didn't like it the first time, you probably won't like it this time. But I think just to turn it down simply because it didn't go through JLAC does not bear any basis on the bill. I got here legally, the right way, following the House procedures. If there's anything we need to stand on in this House, it's procedure. Because a lot of things go haywire, but we need to respect each other and the procedures of the House. So I respectfully ask for your aye vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Harkey. Seeing no further questions or debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Ms. Harkey moves the call. Without objection, we'll recess the regular order of business and reconvene in first extraordinary session. Without objection, we will substitute the roll, the pledge, and prayer. There are a number of bills that need to be read a second time in extraordinary session. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, and Assembly Bill 35.
Those measures have all been read a second time. Is there any other business in extraordinary session? Seeing none, we will recess extraordinary session and reconvene in regular session. Okay, members, we're going to resume with measures on call. File item 75, AB 1112 by Mr. Huffman. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Mr. Huffman moves the call. File item 88, AB 1299 by Huffman. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote. Close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 41, noes 23. Measure passes. File item 6, AB 505 by Harkey. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Ms. Harkey moves the call. Under motions and resolutions, an announcement, the local government committee will be meeting immediately upon adjournment off the floor in the Rules Committee room. Members, another announcement. We will be in session tomorrow beginning at 10 a.m. So we've moved back our start time from tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Session starting at 10 a.m. We will adjourn today as soon as we're done with the two items that are on call. Members, we will proceed to adjourn in memory. Mr. Chesbrough.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to adjourn in memory of a great friend and a renowned scientist, Dr. George Allen, who was a fisheries professor at Humboldt State for more than 30 years and was recognized by the president of the university with the President's Distinguished Service Award for his outstanding contributions to science, to the university and the city of Arcata. Now, what's unique about Dr. Allen is that for years he did research in the city's wastewater ponds on how to raise fish in treated effluent. And we all thought he was kind of a mad scientist. There was that, kind of ick factor. But it turned out all over the world, people raise fish in effluent. And he was an expert at how to do it the right way. I know it sounds awful, but in fact, his work has been the inspiration of many very innovative projects, including the Arcata Marsh and Wildlife Treatment System, which has been emulated across the world. Recently, city of Petaluma opened a brand new marsh treatment project. And so he went from being the mad scientist to being an environmental hero. And we're going to miss him very much. I wanted to honor him here on the floor. I don't have really enough time to tell you all the stories about what an amazing and wonderful man he was, but I just wanted to make sure that we, for a moment, acknowledged his great contribution to the people of California and to science and to our natural environment. So I move that we adjourn in memory. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chesborough. Mr. Furutani, do you have an adjourn in memory today? No. Members, we're going to return to items on call. File item 6, AB 505, Ms. Harkey. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 42, noes 24. The measure passes. Members, today, Thursday, June 2nd, is the last day to amend a bill or delete an urgency clause. Tomorrow, Friday, June 3rd, is the last day for the Assembly to pass non-urgency, non-tax levy Assembly bills. Members, we're going back to items on call. File item 75, AB 1112 by Mr. Huffman. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 36, noes 30. Measure fails. Mr. Huffman notices reconsideration. Seeing no further business to come before us, Mr. Allen moves that we adjourn. Mr. Hagman seconds. All in favor of adjourning, say aye. Opposed, no. We stand adjourned. Reminder, local government is meeting immediately in the Rules Committee room. We will reconvene tomorrow at 10 a.m.